What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for Your Overwatch. Happy Thursday. A new experimental card is live. Let's check it out. Coming through hot and heavy, all hit scan damage now is getting nerfed. We're at maximum fall off range. You'll do 30% of your normal damage when it used to be 50. The developers explained this change may be difficult to notice immediately as it scales damage over a range slightly more than before, but it will lower the impact of hit scan damage outside of their intended optimal ranges. So what I did here is try to stand at what I anticipate to be max fall off range and see if this changes the time to kill of these characters, and in many cases it does. In some cases, dramatically, where you're reaching into a time window of if you were actually standing out in the open for this long, you'd probably be dead. So Ashe used to be able to 3-shot to the head from this range. Now it's gonna take 4, and 5 body shots turns into 7. Batista's a little tricky as I have to try to recoil compensate as to not hit headshots, but I definitely noticed the damage fall off when hitting subsequent body shots. Bastion is gonna be getting a different buff to his Recon version that we'll go over later. McCree's values were pretty dramatic, where full 6 shots to the body could one hit a 200 HP squishy. With the new fall off, you'll have to reload and unload a near full clip. That's 10 shots to the body at this range. At some point, these exact values are not going to be too important to remember, as you'll never come into contact with this kind of duel effectively ever again. At max range, 3 headshots used to do a squishy in. Now it will take 5. Now, obviously, all these values modify based on whether you're getting a damage amp pocket or not. And to some degree, we're at such a long distance that it's not like projectiles land easily either. But the effective damage of projectiles does look more significant when they hold their damage values over range, as opposed to hit scans just kind of tickling you nowadays. But perhaps the bigger, more important takeaway from this patch is the big shakeup within the hit scan hierarchy. I think that'll become more clear when we take a look at the rest of the patch, where they're trying to make Bastion somewhat relevant, and they're giving Widowmaker more range. So it may be the case that Widowmaker looks dominant at long range again, perhaps just for the sheer fact that no other hit scan will be able to touch her very effectively. And not only that, they'll just put out so little pressure damage that at range you might as well pick Widow. That's my prediction for this patch, as the results of these tweaks are fairly similar to changes they did prior to Widow getting nerfed to 175 HP and all the different range changes they did then. The hit scan hierarchy turns round and round, and what the devs seem to be doing works. The different hit scan characters will be more stratified in what ranges they're effective in. I think hidden in between the patch notes here, a character like McCree looks to take the biggest hit from this, because range fights for him in this new patch should feel like a non-option. Ashe, I'm a little iffy on, because there might be breakpoints where, with the pocket, she can edge out that range against everyone else. Oh yeah, and oddly enough, Wrecking Ball is included in the hit scan fall-off nerfs. The only thing I could think of this mattering is Wrecking Ball's matchup against flying characters like Pharah and Echo, whereas dual cannons are actually pretty important to pressuring them out of the air. And he was kind of functioning as a mini Soldier 76 at certain metas and compositional matchups. That might diminish a bit. He might be the other surprising loser from this if his ult generation gets affected. The next patch gives Bastion's Recon mode a run-and-gun buff, where now his weapon spread has been reduced from 1.5 to 1.2. The devs noting that they want to buff his abilities while in between sentry form. And as you can see from this highly scientific spray at the wall test, the bullet grouping is noticeably tighter. But keep in mind, Bastion's range got reined in like everybody else's. So this is a bit of a wash outside of medium range, I'd say, but a bit of a buff at closer range, where if you can keep on the head, you're gonna notice that Terminator run and gun Bastion fantasy begin to come to life. Keep in mind, the devs did say in the recent AMA that they do plan to rework Bastion for Overwatch 2. One of the ideas they had was giving him slow movement while in sentry form, while bringing down the severity of his damage a bit. This is one example of how I think the devs are redesigning the entire hitscan category to be more stratified. And Bastion's place in it is going to be closer to like a soldier alternative with a different ultimate and slightly different playstyle, as opposed to being the bunker character we knew him in Overwatch 1 as. At least that's the direction they're pointing to with this change and the proposed rework. Next change is to D.Va, who has been one-shotting squishies into oblivion with the Call Mech double ultimate buff, a change that is wacky, over the top, and I think perfectly fitting for the game, but definitely overtuned. Now they bring it back to actually address Echo more than D.Va, it seems. The first change is fairly cut and dry, where the damage area is reined in, where it used to be 3 meters, which is a lot bigger than you think, down to 2.5. But the second one is a little bit more complicated, where you no longer build ultimate charge while using self-destruct until after her mech detonates, which, as the devs go to explain, was a mechanic that was particularly obnoxious when Echo was duplicating D.Va, able to get multiple remechs in a row, which partially went with the extra life playstyle that Echo has. Because duplicate gives you a get out of jail free card, you can go in more aggressively than a normal D.Va would, whereas a regular full tank D.Va launches self-destruct and tries to get into safety. Echo, using an extra life, will just runs into the enemy team, which means the Echo player is going to build up a lot more bunny blaster ultimate while running and gunning, looking for the next ult, whereas the regular tank D.Va is going to be protective of her life after you launch the mech and need to safely remech. That's how they explain it in theory, I think, at least for me. I'm such a feeder that I play D.Va as if I have an extra life anyway, just for the off chance that I get a call down mech kill. But as it's constructed, that's their thought process anyway. I tried to replicate this 3 meters range and sort of found it up against this training bot, where I've heard a lot of feedback asking for a damage fall off. Instead, they went with a very hard and fast on-off switch to this range, where if you're out of range, it just doesn't hurt you, doesn't hit you, you're fine. And judging by the visuals of this, it seems to make sense. Previously, at the 3 meter range, it was actually outside the scope of the model, which is overkill. Whereas 2.5 meters feels a lot closer to D.Va. So when you're going up against it, you have a better arm's reach sense of where that call mech can come down on. Next patch note is for Soldier 76, who I didn't mention much earlier. He's definitely hurt by the range fall off being adjusted. So in order to modify that a bit, Soldier now has no damage fall off while in tac visor. This made me think that a nano tac visor on the high ground may be more effective than you're used to it being, as you'll be able to really melt things at longer range with the damage amplification. I think all that's going to be dependent on your skill bracket, but in a world where Widow starts to ease her way back in, I think Soldier is easing his way out. But speaking of Widowmaker, that brings us to the final patch note of the experimental card. Widow's Kiss damage fall-off range has been increased from 60 to 85 to 70 to 100. So both the starting point of the damage fall-off as well as the end point has been extended. The way the devs explain this is to adjust the counter-sniping game, where now when 2 snipers are going against each other, you'll be a little bit more potent. Because remember, there were ranges where Widow would not one-shot kill an Ashe or Hanzo, for example. Now she regains that on probably a lot of maps. And by the way, this is a great patch note from them, one that I wish that they would say more often, where they're explaining not just the most recent change, but the concept of the long-range damage fall-off at all, where they say for Widowmaker, the sniping damage fall-off is mainly in place to restrict the lethality of mid-air grapple shots at extreme distances possible on some maps. As you can imagine, being able to grapple shot above cover to break line of sight of normal map geometry, to just see over everything, means that you can get some real extreme range shots, and that's what the intention is, to have it reined in at all. But at the same time, they're buffing part of the range so that she can still effectively snipe, and you don't get in those awkward Widow battles where you can't kill each other, I guess, which is sort of how it felt sometimes at the previous value. But that's everything for today's patch note video. Just on the experimental for now, but to be honest, with how in-depth this entire experimental is, encompassing the entire Hitscan role, at the very least, we can anticipate this to be a theme that they're trying to go for, redesigning the hierarchy of characters, which largely means most of it probably will go to live as early as Tuesday. But keep an eye out for that in case there are any changes. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it with a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, click subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.